World Humanitarian Action Day, Yemen remains the largest war-affected zone in recent history. Yemeni children continue to face the risk of famine as the conflict expands. Local rights groups urge probe of the death of 20 child cancer patients in Sana'a. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fuad. Yemen has been recognized by the UN as the worst humanitarian crisis in recent times. On World Humanitarian Action Day, war-affected Yemenis continue to suffer due to the ongoing conflict. This report has more details.
As the world commemorates the Humanitarian Action Day on October 19, Yemen tragically bears the brunt of the world's humanitarian crises and aid operations. In 2022, a staggering 23.4 million people, or nearly three-quarters of the population, required humanitarian assistance. The country has been experiencing multiple crises, including a violent conflict, an economic blockade, and currency collapse and natural disasters. Women and children make up an estimated 77% of the 4.3 million people displaced in Yemen, and women now lead approximately 26% of displaced households, compared to 9% before the escalation of the conflict in 2015. In addition, more than 6.5 million women and girls of childbearing age require immediate access to protection services. During the visit of Joyce Msuwa, the UN Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, she stated that though important progress has been made since the start of the truce, enormous humanitarian needs remain in Yemen.
Substantial support from donors, development actors, and international financial institutions is needed to turn this tide and chart a path forward. According to new estimates that will be released tomorrow, 17 million people will be facing acute food insecurity during the last 3 months of this year.
The situation in Yemen is most visible in widespread malnutrition, disease outbreaks, civilian casualties, and displacement, as well as the country's collapsing economy and looming famine. Yemen is expected to witness an increase in humanitarian needs in 2023 amid the absence of a de-escalation of the conflict and the deteriorating economic situation. There is an urgent need to redirect humanitarian funding to Yemen, as similar interventions needed in Ukraine should not risk donor countries' commitments to easing Yemen's humanitarian crisis, which is exacerbated by the continuation of both conflicts.
International aid agencies warn that the current level of hunger in Yemen is unprecedented. More than 70 million Yemenis are food insecure, especially children. The Fund report has more details.
According to the United Nations, 500,000 children in Yemen are at risk of starvation as the civil war threatens to reignite after months of a precarious ceasefire. Hundreds of thousands of Yemeni children have long been threatened by hunger. With the ceasefire's expiration, the conflict between the country's Iran-backed Houthi rebels and the coalition is now on the verge of escalation. The violence is to blame, but so are increasing food costs caused by the turmoil in Ukraine, which supplies 40% of Yemen's wheat. Yemeni's diet is mainly reliant on wheat. Ukraine provided 40% of Yemen's grain until Russia's invasion disrupted the flow. People in developed countries are working harder to meet the rising expenditures. Food in Yemen is now 60% more costly than it was last year. In underdeveloped nations, inflation may be fatal. Approximately 2.2 million Yemeni children under the age of 5 are malnourished. According to Save the Children, a child dies every 10 minutes of a preventable disease, and the UN says that 1.3 million pregnant or nursing mothers suffered from acute malnutrition this year. Yemenis, as well as foreign aid organizations, are concerned that the situation may worsen. According to the UN, Hodeidah, along with the northern province of Hajjah, are among the places most affected by extremely severe food shortages and acute malnutrition. Every month, dozens of children arrive at hospitals severely malnourished, struggling to breathe, and covered in sores. Due to major financial deficits and rising global food prices, the UN Food Agency has reduced rations for millions of people. According to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, the World Food Programme has prioritized the most vulnerable 13.5 million Yemenis for months. The UN reported that by the end of September, it had received $2 billion of the $4.27 billion required to deliver life-saving humanitarian relief and protection services to 17.9 million people in Yemen. According to Oxfam, the organization requires more funding, more consistent access to most vulnerable people, and a peaceful conclusion to the war.
أبي مات بشارع 40 دحين أنا أشقى على أسرتي مع باقي اللي أنا أصرف عليهم كل شيء. أنا اسمي أنس رصيد سيف، عمري 12 سنة. أنا أشتغل بورشة حديد من الساعة 7 للساعة 6. أحيانا أسرع، أحيانا أقص، أحيانا أرنق، أحيانا أنقش، أي حاجة أنا أعمل. لا الساعة لما الساعة 6 أوقف. أنا وقفت الدراسة علشان ما في أحد يشقى على أسرتي. أدرس أخواني الباقي من دون 4 وأنا الخامس. أحلم إن أفتح ورشة أبي وأشقى على أسرتي وأندي لهم مصاريف. وأدرس أخوتي لآخر الجامعات وأطبخ أي شيء.
The Yemeni government has approved the entry of the fuel ship carrying about 30,000 metric tons of gasoline to the port of Hodeidah. On the other hand, 2 commercial flights of Yemeni Airlines arrived this week despite the end of the humanitarian truce 16 days ago. Around 4,000 Yemeni passengers came to and from Yemen through these flights within 2 weeks. A meeting was held in Hais district south of Al Hodeidah with the humanitarian affairs officer in Aden. The meeting focused on supporting education, health and water as well as the needs of the displaced in Haima, El Khoucha and Hais. The official in charge of humanitarian affairs confirmed that the organizations have approved the plan for the beginning of next year and will intensify their humanitarian interventions more than before.
A long discussion was held and we've reached a solution. The international organizations have a great role in the western coast. They offer big services, but we want them to offer basic services that the citizen needs. There are certain things that must be available. There is need to focus on the sustainable projects.
While Yemen is waited to have a committee to investigate human rights violations committed by the warring sides, it was disappointing that Human Rights Council adopted an ineffective resolution that failed to form an accountable body to probe human rights violations during the war. This report has more details.
On October 7th, the Human Rights Council issued a hollow resolution on Yemen that fails to establish a credible, independent, and impartial monitoring and accountability body. As a result, serious human rights abuses, including obvious war crimes, are likely to continue unabated. The Item 10 resolution falls woefully short of the demand from Yemeni civil society and international rights organizations to create a new international accountability mechanism for Yemen. It requires that only the Office of the UN High Commissioner provide technical assistance and capacity building to the government of Yemen. The Group of Eminent Experts, or GEE, formed by the Human Rights Council in 2017, is an international, impartial, and independent organization that reported on human rights breaches and abuses in Yemen. Over its term, the GEE has released detailed reports outlining a shocking litany of human rights breaches and atrocities committed by all parties to the war. Last year, the GEE had its renewal mandate rejected by the same council and the group was disbanded. The coalition, which launched its military intervention in Yemen in 2014, spearheaded an intensive lobbying campaign to terminate the GEE's mandate. The lack of any significant and effective follow-up solution demonstrates the coalition's ability to dodge accountability for its human rights breaches, including obvious war crimes in Yemen. Yemeni civil society is now confronted with the tragic truth that the UN will have no accountability mechanisms for Yemen. Members of the Council fundamentally disregarded the will of Yemeni civil society, which has been unwavering in its demands for an international independent criminal accountability mechanism. A UN-backed truce that had been in place collapsed days before the resolution was adopted, leading to an increase in bloodshed on the ground and rising worries about the already dismal humanitarian and human rights situation. Without a surveillance system, Yemeni civilians will undoubtedly be at greater risk. Even though Yemen is moving down the international community's list of priorities, civil society's demands for reparation from warring parties are becoming louder. The Yemeni people's needs must not go unanswered.
38 civil society organizations in Yemen called for an urgent international investigation into the death of about 20 children with leukemia in Sana'a due to taking expired chemo drugs. Houthis are accused of being behind such a crime as some of their senior leaders are involved in smuggling drugs and are trying to cover up the crime. This report has more details.
38 civil society organizations in Yemen called for an urgent international investigation into the death of about 20 children with leukemia in Sana'a, which is under the Houthi control. In a statement issued by the organizations, they called on the international community, the World Health Organization, the United Nations Children Fund, and all concerned international bodies to open an urgent international investigation into the causes and repercussions of this disaster, and to prosecute and hold those involved accountable. The statement said the organizations are following with great concern the death of about 20 children with leukemia who died as a result of being injected with smuggled and expired medicines in the department designated for their treatment at Kuwait University. The statement added that, according to press information, more than 45 children were injected with this treatment, and symptoms of severe headache, convulsions and coma began to appear on the children who were injected, which led to the death of 20 of them in separate days since they were given the dose. The Houthis say that the number of those who were injected is 29 children. 10 of them died, while one remained in intensive care unit. The Houthi rebels blamed one of the pharmacists responsible, but the Syndicate of Pharmacists and Medical Professions indicated that the Houthi militia is seeking to hunt down the weakest link in the case, with the aim of diverting attention from the main culprits, who are responsible for the pharmaceutical companies that imported the drug.
Several citizens were wounded after an explosive device went off in the city of Taiz, west of Yemen. A local source said the explosive device exploded in one of the military crews in front of a restaurant in the center of Taiz, leaving a number of civilians wounded. The Yemeni government has renewed calls for international and regional cooperation to support the mining activities. The Prime Minister said Houthis have turned Yemen into the largest minefield in the world. During his meeting with a delegation from the Halu Trust organization, he called for condemning Houthi deliberate planting of mines. Coming next. El Qamariya is a Yemeni cafe in the United States that serves coffee mixed with heritage flavor.
This is one of the saddest visits I have ever done in my professional life. This hospital sees 2,500 patients per day. Landmine survivors aging from 7 years old to over 50. I have seen super malnourished children that just broke my heart, with their mothers who have been here for a month or longer. But I am just impressed by the medical service providers for their commitment. This hospital is run by the UN and humanitarian partners. There are immense needs. Half of Yemeni hospitals are not functioning, or they are completely destroyed by the war. We need more support to save lives in Yemen, children, women, and men.
Welcome back. The Houthi militia directed public and private schools to conduct central exams for students. This move is seen by observers as a way to observe the application of the Houthi sectarian curriculum. This comes within the Houthi systematic framework to erode the national identity of Yemenis, especially of children, and replace it with a sectarian one. The merchants of Al Tahrir Street in Taiz carried out a total strike to denounce the repeated attacks by outlawed elements. The merchants denounced the silence of the local authority and the security services in the city towards such assaults by gunmen.
نحن تجار شارع التحرير الأعلى
We are the residents in a Tahrir street. We repeated the same closure because of the same outlawed person. He assaulted one shop and in another day he assaults another one. He has a cover from the local authority. If the local authority does not act, the merchant will stop paying taxes or any other duties unless they move to encounter that outlawed person.
El Qamariya is a newly opened yummy cafe in the United States. According to the cafe owner, the place not only serves the famous Yemeni coffee, but educates the American clients about the rich Yemeni culture. The following report gives more details.
Each village in Yemen has coffee with its own special ingredients. Qamariya Coffee House has taken each village's coffee ingredients and offers them on its menu. And now it brought the aroma of the Yemeni coffee to Grand Blanc in Michigan. The word Qamariya itself means a colorful glass window in Yemen, and it is part of every Yemeni home as part of the tradition to allow sunlight and moonlight inside the house. The co-founders Munif Mouiri and Hatem Al-Aidarous named it Qamariya with the idea in mind of putting a spotlight on Yemeni coffee. The owners of the coffee house said in a press release that the new location's uniquely designed interior features an elegant and bright space that pays homage to the coffee farmers and artisans of Yemen.
What differentiates Qamariya from other coffee chains is we work directly with the farmers. This vertically integrated model allows us to maintain possession of the bean from harvest to cup.
Qamariya's founders Mouiri and Al-Aidarous began their journey as coffee wholesalers, working directly with Yemeni farmers to harvest the specialty beans and export them to the U.S.
Our traditional Yemeni beverages are made to order at our cafes, always with the same techniques used to make coffee from a variety of villages across Yemen.
Though single-origin Yemeni coffee beans would become a rarity as a result of Yemen's decade-old war, Qamariya continued to source and roast the beans for over a decade, with a distribution network that is spanned across the country. The coffee is grown in Yemen and shipped to multiple locations in Dearborn, Dearborn Heights, Troy, Commerce Charter Township, Allen Park, and now in Grand Blanc, as Yemen is considered the gateway of the coffee that crosses all the borders to reach the whole world.
The war and hard living conditions have forced Yemeni women to work in order to provide for their families. Anisa is a Yemeni woman from Abyan who makes mud furnaces and sells them to support her family. The following report gives more details.
A Yemeni woman takes the furnace industry as a source of income. With each operation, Anisa packs her luggage heading on foot to the soil lands to collect soil and create mud, where mud is one of the main components of her profession, known as the clay tannour industry, which she started when she was young.
My job is making clay ferns. I learned this when I was 18, and this is how I make a living.
Anisa fetches and crystallizes the quantities of clay she brought, which she then mixes with water.
I get the soil from far lands, then I start mixing it in the first day. Then second day, I only do simple steps, and I finalize it in the third day and wait for buyers.
A difficult and tiring process that the clay furnace industry goes through, which is used for the purposes of traditional baking, as it's handmade and passes through multiple stages.
I leave it under the sun to get dry from 2 to 4 hours, and it might take a whole day, depending on the weather condition.
Despite the difficulties that Anisa faces with her profession, she takes it as a humble source of income for herself and her family, especially in the light of the difficult conditions that many Yemeni families face as a result of the ongoing war, in addition to the lack of governmental encouragement and support.
I hope that the humanitarian organizations to look after such small projects to provide a more sustainable income.
With persistence, struggle and patience, Anisa gives us all a life lesson through her hard work and her determination.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. On World Humanitarian Action Day, Yemen remains the largest war-affected zone in recent history. Yemeni children continue to face the risk of famine as the conflict expands. Local rights groups urge probe of the death of 20 child cancer patients in Sana'a. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouad. Thank you for watching.